we were there for 3 days. This is kind of like day 2 of Tour PSA, if you will. We went to see kind of how the guns were built. So we went through engineering. And then, of course, we went to the machine shops, and then, of course, we went to final assembly. These are kind of split up in different days. So, like, I'm trying to process it into one, kind of deal and kind of figure out, all right, how do I explain to you what's happening here? But so I think the first and foremost, most important is to start engineering, which would be Ferris.
Yeah, we didn't really, I think because with everything they launched at SHOT Show, that was the one set of offices, and we had pretty much unlimited access to everywhere but the primer facility and engineering, just because I think if you walked into engineering, you'd get an idea of what they were working on.
Yeah, so and we couldn't go into engineering, which is fine. We still got to talk to the engineers, which was cool. There's a lot of potential and smart. I mean, there's already smart people there, but
they've hired some heavy hitters.
Yeah.
They basically what they've done strategy wise, it seems they've got a lot of guys who've worked in the industry a long time, have a ton of experience, and then they have a lot of younger guys that don't necessarily have the experience,
but are enthusiastic.
The enthusiasm and the energy. So when you combine those two together, you get this amazing mix.
You do, and it was really cool. Some of those, I mean. I'm going to go ahead and say this because it's just something that we both talked about extensively. That whole company felt like a very family-oriented, very, like, down-to-earth. Like, we saw Jamin, we saw his wife, who's their chief compliance officer. Everybody's just laid back, super nice. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure things happen. You got to come down on people, but... It was very. It was.
I'm going to say laid back. I'm going to say they were very nice, very polite, and they had a purpose, and it was very clear they were doing everything they could to push that purpose of the company.
And I think, man, like people say that the tagline of manufacturing freedom or equipping people affordably is just whatever, just marketing, but like I truly think that's their goal. Like I truly feel like that is their actual goal.
From the guy, and granted, not all the machine operators and all that seemed, for a lot of those guys, it is just a job, but there are a ton of people there that is the mission of the company. You could really tell there's a core there that is just emanating from the bottom up.
Yep.
That is their goal.
And I will say a lot of, like, we interacted with a lot of, like, the line leaders, I would call them, or they were heads of their respective departments, and you could feel it, like they believed in what they were doing.
And again, it was a mix of they're masters at bringing that mix of talent. That is, you've got these guys with a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and then people that don't necessarily they got all their experience at PSA.
Yeah.
But they found really good and hardworking, smart individuals, and they brought them up from the very bottom.
It's like I'd really like to see that there was a guy who is in their e-commerce department now, and he had zero experience in e-commerce, but he started on the line and he proved himself at PSA, worked his way up, and they trained him up and taught him what he needed to know.
He was extremely competent,
man, and that's really good to see. It's good to see a company doing that because that's kind of outside the norm.
If you're there and you've got talent, they will recognize it and they will.
It seems to be a very good company to work for, and it's always good to promote and support those kind of companies, and it's really good to see it in the firearms industry. But anyway, so we went to Ferris Machine. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Ferris. But anyway, that's where their engineering was housed. But they also had a fair number of machines there. There they were making the Jackal uppers.
The Jackal receivers, yeah.
And they were making the Jackal sleds.
I think they were making AR handguards there too. I know they were making AR upper receiver. It was all non-serialized parts.
Yes, that was 100% non-serialized parts there.
And they've got engineering in that same building.
They do. And this is all, PSA is growing rapidly. And so, like, all of this could change. And so, like, in a year, this video, none of these people will be in the same place.
Like,
they'll be in different
Metro,
buildings.
they had a little bit of room to expand and grow.
Yeah.
This place was as optimized.
Yeah, it was maxed out.
Yeah.
They were making some AK parts. I know they were manufacturing the AK bolts.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they manufacture the AKV and the GF3, GF4, all those AK bolts are manufactured there as well. Like you said, pretty much anything non-serialized is probably game there, except for like barrels and stuff. That's at DC1. So they did all that there. They were making some of the AK trunnion components or something there as well.
They were making the Jackal trunnions, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Jackal trunnions.
They were making the
Jackal upper, which
AK, some like the AK tangs, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what it was. But yeah, so they were doing quite a bit there, and a lot with aluminum, like you said. They were doing the upper receiver itself. I remember seeing handguards other than the Jackals.
But we did not walk through the entire facility because we walked through most of it, but there were a lot of machines we didn't check what they were running because there were so many machines packed into.
Yeah, that was a lot.
That space, they might have been able to add 3 or 4 more CNCs in the entire building with what they had left. Maybe. Yeah.
But no, I mean, they're running wide open all the time trying to keep everything in stock. But that facility did a lot, it seemed like, with Jackal. And that was cool to see, personally, because I have a Jackal. And I'm
probably going to get one soon.
The next place we went to, and it's kind of like in line with how we saw it, but it's not necessarily how in line with how the guns come together. But we went to DC1, which is where they make all the barrels. I don't remember what DC stands for. All I know was that was a facility that formerly made death choppers. Used to make chopper parts. Well, then they started making barrels. Then PSA came in and bought them out, because they
I think they were making barrels for PSA, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
At one point, and then PSA is like, hey, we'll own this part of our production.
Yeah. So that was cool to see because they just have the barrel blanks, bring them in. They're making 308 barrels here. They're making 5.56 barrels here, different profiles, government profiles, pencil profile, whatever. But it was
the scale.
Yeah, the scale was crazy.
And the guy running the place was...
That's another one of those that just, loved what he did and was just a total nerd about it. And that's honestly who you want running it.
And he was in the Marines.
Yep.
But I think he might have been more of a reserve type because he had been in the industry. He was an older guy, but not that old. And he had worked at some serious companies. Mm-hmm. He had worked for a program in the industry doing quality control and had done a lot of consulting at a big name companies that you guys would all recognize and all make premium AR-15s.
Yeah. And that was one thing, when we went in and looked at the QC areas, they had tons of different machines, and they explained it to us, but a lot of it, I'm not going to lie, went over my head. I was just like, you're doing a lot.
and I'll say this. So when the QC, it's not like they're testing every single barrel that comes through. What they do is they're constantly making barrels, and then they're checking them periodically. And then if one gets out of spec, then they start checking the ones around that, figure out where it is, figure out, hey, do we need to change a tool on a machine? Yep. Is a program gone haywire? What do we need to do to fix this from having a problem?
And so I'm glad you said that because that's how most massive scale manufacturers do it, which is why everybody's like, oh, this must have been made on a Monday. It's like, no, that one was made on tooling that was going out and wasn't caught in time. But a lot of times they can narrow, like you just said, they'll narrow it in and go get those ones that are out of spec and bring them in and, take them out of the line and then fix the tool, and then the rest of them are good.
And you might have a boutique AR-15 manufacturer that gets, 10 barrels and 100 barrels and whatever, and they're sitting there measuring them with calipers and, they're checking a lot of stuff. These guys are using machines that are at a whole different, your average set of calipers is not going to be able to tell you or a set of no-go chamber gauges are not going to be able to tell you what the machinery they were using from a quality control standpoint.
That stuff was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was checking things to 10,000ths of an inch in certain facilities.
And they were showing us the barrels. They had one that had an issue, I remember. And I was like, this isn't going to pass. We're going to have to do some things, whatever, change this. We've got to make some changes to this machine. But they're also very honest, hey, a perfect barrel is never going to leave this facility because that does not exist. Yeah. Understanding you're trying to perfect in reality is just being within
a spec.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was cool to see it. It was cool to watch it come, and we couldn't record their rifling process because that was proprietary. Couldn't share anything proprietary, which was totally understandable. But that place was really cool. Got to see a ton of barrels being made, dude. They're cranking out a ton of barrels.
They had carts.
Yeah.
Just pretty much at every station with just, I don't know, 200, 500 barrels on a cart.
Yeah.
It was
crazy.
Yeah.
But from there, we went right around the corner to DC2. They're literally like, I swear they're in spitting distance. They were close.
Yeah.
So DC2 machines serialized parts. That is where all of your lowers are made, and that is where the Dagger is assembled.
One thing I forgot to say, at DC1, they also manufactured some small AR-15 components.
Oh, yes, they did.
What were they?
So they were also doing the chambers there, because they were chambering, checking headspaces and stuff.
But not just, but as far, they had a couple other, maybe it was like AR-15 bolt latches or
Yes, yeah, they had a machine that at full capacity would make the most bolt catches in the world or something.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It would make enough bolt catches for the whole.
It was the entire. It had an entire line dedicated to it, and they're like, "Yeah, we're running this on."
Like, yeah, if they had tooled all that up, they could make more bolt catches than the world even needs. So
yeah, it was
crazy.
And then they were making That's where they were making the Jackal bolt carriers. I believe they had that cell down at the end with the newer machines.
You're right. Yeah, I think you're right. It's like,
that
man,
was
it all
cool.
runs together. So yeah,
it was really cool to see that though.
Yeah, it was all. Then we went to DC2, which was like right around the corner. That's where all the PSA lowers are made. So it didn't matter what. But that's where the serialization took place, and also that's where the PSA daggers are assembled. Which is different than everything else. Everything else goes to
Dunbar.
Okay. I thought I had it wrong. I couldn't remember. I knew it was done something. But so that was cool because we went around. We saw the actual daggers being made. I will say that that's an interesting line because it's very fluid right now. The guy that's in charge of that, once again, big-time industry guy, like long-time industry guy, worked at a massive company.
That guy was bored to do.
Yeah, he's like...
He's a little bit different.
Yeah, he was locked in, man. He was locked in. I was like, whew, this guy's intense.
We'd be talking to him. He'd be talking to us, and then...
He'd be like, hold on, I see something. I got to fix it. I'm like, hey, man, do what you got to do.
30 seconds later, he'd be back.
Yeah. Handled it. And I was like, right on. But it was cool. Like, it was cool to see the daggers come together. That was where we got to shoot the micro dagger. I think it was the C1. I think they call it the C1.
Yeah.
Because it has the little like
ported.
Yeah. So we got to shoot that. We got to see where they assemble, and then they test fire every one of those daggers. And it was actually interesting because the poor girl that had to load those mags.
Well, not only that, she had to take Magpul.
She had to take them out of the packaging.
Yeah. So she's
poor girl. Y'all say a prayer for her. But she seemed fine. She was content.
She seemed very happy.
She was like, I found the process to do it. You got to take them all out first, and then you got to load them. I was like, well, thank God it's you.
And it was interesting hearing about the tests because what they do is they start with full, even some, I might even said they put 2 mags through a gun. So when they bring a new product online, they start with a lot of rounds for test fire. And then they progressively, as they feel comfortable.
Yep. Then they just test them 3 to 5 through every one. But it's interesting because the mags, and I don't know why I think this is interesting. It's just it was interesting to me. The mag that gun shot on that range to test fire is the mag that comes in the gun.
Yeah, I did not expect that, honestly.
I just figured they'd be swapping mags, and nope, that is the mag that you get with the gun. It's been test fired with the mag that you're going to get.
Honestly, from a cost perspective, it makes more sense, though, because we saw other parts of the process where they had parts dedicated towards that, and then they have to they wear out.
Yeah, that once
such high volume.
Yeah, once we get to Dunbar, that's what they.
Yeah.
So that was cool. That's why micro dagger was cool, and then realizing what all went into that. But that line is constantly changing right now. That guy's constantly like changing, making improvements. So it's very fluid. All right, so once we got done at DC2, which by the way was massive. Like I said, serialization. Hold on, I need to go over one thing. At DC2, every step along the way, it was just QC. Again, crazy expensive machines. they put a test lower in. It kind of made sure everything was in spec.
Something that was really cool when we walked in there was seeing the H&R forgings.
Yeah. So that the forgings for H&R is different than the ones for like PSA because obviously they're more clone correct.
The H&R guns on the market right now are the most clone correct.
Yeah.
Retro ARs.
Yeah,
available.
I've got one. And it's awesome. I mean, it's just so cool to have something that's almost exactly what it was then.
Yeah.
So once we got done at DC2, did the QC thing was really cool, and then just because the machines that they had were.
Did you find the AR part kind of boring after seeing the AR lowers after seeing the other process? It was just kind of like
the AR was what you'd expect it to be. They're machining lowers. They're machining.
There's not that many steps in the process because they've got really efficient tooling, and then they go to serialize.
The ammo. First of all, the scene AAC was just like starting there was like, oh man, why'd you start here? This should have been the finale. It's like the firework finale going off before the rest of the show kind of almost ruins it for you. But it was still the coolest thing at the end of the day was when we got to Dunbar. I think is seeing all the stuff we saw all week
culminate together.
Yep, just come together and just get put together in that one place. And that place was killing it. So first and foremost, I'm going to cover this because this is kind of how the process went. That is where they do all their anodizing. So we got to see the anodizing tanks, which was really cool. That big conveyor came over top. It actually put a group of lowers down while we were there and brought them back up. And each tank had its own process. I'm not one to speak on the process because I don't know that much about anodizing, but it was really cool to watch it be done and see,
there are a lot of stages to it.
There's a ton of tanks. There was 7, 8 tanks there or more?
Probably more like 14 or 28 or so. It was each tank was about this wide, and there was a lot. It was a huge, and a lot of them were double tanks where they could the same process and had 2 or 3 tanks.
Was there only one?
Yeah, there was one crane essentially that would come.
One crane that went back and forth. Yeah, so man, it was wild though. It was cool when it picks it up and comes out.
And again, the guys running the anodizing, they ticked it different.
Yeah, they knew. That was their thing. They were honed in on it, and they knew exactly what was going on.
Naming chemicals off and the process, and then, if this gets out of spec this far, this is going to happen. That's going to happen.
Yeah, they were honed in on that. That was really. I mean, every one of these processes were really cool to see in their own respect.
Yeah,
even if it was minor. But that was not minor. There was a lot going on there.
We talked to 2 or 3 guys at the anodizing, and every one of them though just clearly knew that process inside and out.
Yeah, it was really cool. So Dunbar, in all aspects, this is where most of the guns are assembled. So outside of the Dagger line, so the anodizing happens there. I think if anything's nitride, it's done
they
third party.
That somewhere, yeah.
But so what we first saw when we walked in there was actual the Saber line of ARs and Jackals being assembled. So that was cool.
Yeah.
So that was where final assembly saw some Saber 308s coming together. That was really cool. And then there was a ton of Saber uppers. So that first room where all this, the Saber and regular AR stuff was, then H&R has their own, assembly area. So they do kind of keep it all a little separate. H&R was working on some cool stuff.
The guy that runs the H&R side, Mike is
the perfect, he is the H&R guy. He is the perfect dude to be.
I got to talk to him at NRAM last year, and then seeing him, his mind is on a different level than most people with this, and the H&R brand long term is going to do some.
Yeah.
And what he told us, he said back in the 60s, H&R was a $400 million company. Back in the 60s, I think he said.
Yeah. But so H&R is doing some cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then we went into, this was where it really got cool for me. Then we kind of moved over into the AK stuff.
Yeah.
I remember they had that sign up there. It was like, "Welcome to," I don't even remember what it says. Com block something. Now get out.
They had some funny signs.
Yeah.
around
So, they were assembling a metric ton of AKs.
there.
In that same area, in that same cell, they had the Cerakote facility. So that's where they were just Cerakoting AK. So that was like handguards for ARs, lowers, anything that was Cerakoted, I think went through that room right there. But then they also had all the racks of completed AK receivers that were ready for final assembly. They had like GF3s, GF4s, AKVs. Like, it was really cool. They had like a crank or two laying around, I think.
Yeah, they had cranks in production, and then they had. It was interesting because they had a serialized system to where if the ATF said, "Hey, we're going to come in, we want to do a spot check, find receiver X," they can go, "Okay, it's at this station right now."
Yeah.
Whereas before it was,
You got to
it's
go
on
find
production
it
floor
in the building. Yeah.
Yeah, so they could go and look at a rack of 50 AKs as opposed to we got to search 500 AKs right now to see.
And so everybody's like, "Oh, damn, they have ATF." It's like, oh, yeah, agreed. But they come in, and the reason they might do a spot check is they want to make sure that the serialized part is where you say it is, and it hasn't walked off.
Yeah.
So that's why it may be done. It's aggravating, but it is what it is.
The craziest part for us, though, I think, was seeing the ARs uppers they sell just as.
Yeah, I was just reading that. They test fire every AR upper, and it was crazy because what you were saying earlier was, like they just burn through parts and they throw them over here in this bin, like lowers that they have put so many rounds through.
Well,
and
they
stuff.
had lowers, but then they've got just like they'd take a rack of like 50 or 100 uppers. They throw a bolt and a charging handle each one, send them into the test fire bay, and then they come back out and they strip out those because they're selling them without.
Yeah, they're selling them stripped uppers. Yeah, and then those, they were like, "Man, by the time we're done with those things are shot."
Yeah, he's sitting there looking at him. He's like, "So what do you do with the?" They're like, "You don't want them," because they could tell you were like part of you's kind of like those are going to go to waste.
No, I didn't want those because those have been dogged out. Yeah. So, and that's where finally, like, the completed guns are packaged there, but then they're sent to Metro for fulfillment. And finally, going back to Metro, that's where all of the orders are filled from. They have serialized and unserialized, and it is a massive facility. They send out 7 UPS tractor trailer loads a day. Not LTLs either. Not less than truckloads. 7 full truckloads a day.
What shocked me was how many shelving units. Like when I say shelving units, these are pallet racks.
Yeah, stacked to the ceiling.
Pallets on each side. Yeah, and the ceiling is probably 50 foot, 60 foot, like
at least
massive warehouse ceilings. The percentage of that warehouse that was serialized parts was insane.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge, but then looking at the unserialized side, it was like, oh, this is tiny, but it's still huge. Like, man, there was tens of thousands of guns in that area.
And how many AR uppers did we see walking through the unserialized? Because those are non-serial.
Yeah, they're non-serializing, so they're just stacked to
the amount of PSA. What really surprised me going there was seeing the percentage. Because you think of PSA and you think, okay, they sell really cool guns, great uppers at a great quality for price.
Regular AR-15s,
but you're like
sabers, whatever.
Most of what they're selling is scopes, optics. No, like I mean, probably the majority. There's dollar-wise, I don't know how it breaks down, but the volume of PSA branded product that is leaving that warehouse is insane.
Yeah,
it's the ratio on that surprised me. PSA is moving a lot of products they make.
All in all, it was an awesome experience.
And what was your biggest takeaway looking at the quality control and the price value standpoint that PSA tries to achieve?
I really think they're trying to be the best value.
Not the lowest price, not the highest quality.
Yeah, not the lowest price, not the highest quality. Although they're wildly focused on QC, which is where you meet in the middle of those two things.
They're trying to offer you the best quality they can get at the best price, and that's with their vertical integration. I think they do it. Like they told me some of the numbers of what they get back in guns. It's very low.
Percentage wise, it's extremely low.
And talking with some of the guys in the AR section, a lot of that I think is non-complete uppers that guys get that they throw in. They're throwing them on a lower that who knows what it has parts wise,
or throwing in who knows where the bolt carrier came from.
Yes.
So there's a lot of moving parts to any particular firearm or AR, but I think that they're making the right hires, and they're also prioritizing the right things. So they're prioritizing quality control, and there's always people that are going to criticize it, and they do have that name of, oh, they're, whatever. But I think they're making an active effort to change that, not just from a marketing perspective. They're not just trying to change their name in the industry. They're actually trying to change that. They're actually trying to make a quality product.
The guns they
price.
are going to be putting out 5 years from now, not saying they're going to be on the level of HK or what, because I'm not sure if they're going to use the same quality of components in that, but their testing protocols and everything, they're going to try to hit a better price point than say an HK. But I think their testing protocols and everything else is probably going to be there.
And part of HK is you're going to pay for the name. Yeah. You're going to pay premium for the name. Even if it was on the same quality, you're going to pay for the age of the company and the name of the company. Yeah. So take that for what you will.
They have a different business model.
Yeah. I mean, it's all, and I really think, and I truly believe this after seeing it firsthand, they are trying to equip as many Americans as possible with firearms, period.
Yeah. Seeing the operation, meeting the people that run it, and seeing the enthusiasm that a lot of their employees have, like Evan, guy running production, he's another one of those guys that started just working at the company and worked his way up.
Yep.
And those guys are mixing, again, that great enthusiasm with guys that can know how to temper enthusiasm when it needs to be tempered and have the experience.
Yeah.
And they're hiring some players.
But they're doing that, but they do promote from within and build people up, and that's important too. And that's what's going to that creates a good company culture.
Yeah.
And that's going to lead to a good quality product. You bring in the people that know how to do the checks and balances, and you promote from within from good people that have stuck with you and are good people, not just they show up for
and
work.
Provide a true enthusiasm, because you get a little bit jaded sometimes when you've been in an industry. And I think PSA, seeing some of these engineers and whatnot, they've re-energized these guys.
Yeah, because they're getting to work on fun projects. It's not like, hey, we're just going to make another AR, but let's change the handguard a little bit. No, they're actually making guns from the ground up.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah,
that's real cool. So hope you guys have enjoyed this this tour that we tried to take you along with. Probably not the best video in the world, but hey, did what I could.
Thanks to PSA for having us down there.
Thanks Josiah. Thanks everybody that indulged us for the week. It was really cool to see. We did run a few employees off because they didn't like cameras. I won't forget that.
I just don't think they liked you.
It could have been. But she looked at that camera. She said, "Oh no, she left. I don't know where she went, but she was gone." Anyway, but I mean, it was a cool place, and man. Not everybody will get the opportunity to go tour it, but it's pretty awesome. And hopefully this gives everybody a little bit of insight into what's going on at PSA and what's to come. Yeah. So, good times.